When my dad died, I thought the worst was over, until I found the second phone hidden in his closet. When my dad died, I thought grief would be the hardest thing I'd ever face. Turns out, grief was the easy part. The hard part was realizing that the man I spent my whole life admiring, the man I thought I knew better than anyone, was a stranger all along. Dad died suddenly. Heart attack. He was only 62. One minute he was mowing the lawn, whistling that same off-key tune he always did when the weather was nice, and the next, he was gone. It didn't seem real. The ambulance came. The neighbors stood in their driveways pretending not to watch, and I just stood there holding his phone, trying to call Mom, who was in Arizona visiting my aunt. It was a blur. The funeral, the casseroles, the cards that all said the same thing. He was a good man. He loved his family. He will be missed. And yeah, all of that was true. He was a good man. At least, I thought he was. Dad wasn't the kind of guy you could stay mad at for long. He was quiet, patient, always fixing things. If you broke something, he'd shrug and say, "That's what glue's for." If you were upset, he'd offer to take you for a drive because he said, "The world looks smaller when you're moving." When I was a kid, we'd drive out to the edge of town to this little lake surrounded by pine trees. He'd park, open the trunk, pull out 2 sodas, and we'd just sit on the hood of the car, watching the water. He didn't talk much, but when he did, it mattered. People tell you who they are, Lily. He once told me when I was 13, you just have to listen between the words. I remembered that for years after he was gone. It became almost like a mantra, which made what I found later even harder to accept. After the funeral, Mom stayed with me for a few weeks. She didn't want to go back to the house alone. Neither did I, but someone had to. So one Saturday morning, I drove out there by myself. The house was exactly how he left it. Coffee mug in the sink, newspaper folded neatly on the counter, shoes by the back door. It smelled like him. That mix of cedar aftershave and motor oil that clung to everything he owned. For a long time, I just stood in the living room, touching things like they were sacred. The dent in the couch cushion where he always sat, the stack of books on the end table, his reading glasses resting on top. I thought I'd feel closer to him being there, but the silence was too loud. I started organizing, because that's what grief does. It makes you want to control something, anything. I boxed up clothes, sorted tools in the garage, even cleaned out the junk drawer he always said was off limits. Then I went to his office. That was the one room in the house that had always been off limits for real. Growing up, if I even leaned on the doorknob, he'd appear out of nowhere, calm but firm. Not now. Lily, Dad's working? I never questioned it. He was an engineer, always working on some new design project. He had clients who trusted him. It made sense. But standing there now, surrounded by the hum of the old air conditioner and the dust catching in the sunlight, I realized I didn't actually know what he did for work. Not really. There were blueprints rolled up in the corner, boxes of files, notebooks filled with measurements and sketches, and one locked drawer in his desk. I searched the office for a key but couldn't find one, so I used a screwdriver. The drawer popped open with a sharp click. Inside was a small black flip phone, the kind no one used anymore. It was still plugged into a charger. At first, I thought it was just an old backup until I pressed the power button. The screen lit up, the battery icon was full, and there were messages, dozens of them, from one number, no name. The most recent was from 2 weeks before he died. Unknown. Same place tonight. Dad. Candles visiting. Unknown. Next week then. Same time. Dad. Always. My hands went cold. L. That was me. I scrolled further back. Unknown. Missed you yesterday. Rain check? Dad. Wouldn't miss it twice. Unknown. Bring the usual? Dad. Of course. You know me. There were hundreds of messages like that. Casual, intimate, familiar. Never names, never details, but the tone. It wasn't business. It wasn't friendship. It was personal. I clicked on the photos folder next. There weren't many, just 5. The first was a blurry shot of a dock at night, lights reflecting on the water. The second, a woman's hand holding a paper cup of coffee, a small gold bracelet around her wrist, and the third, my dad, smiling, standing beside that same lake he used to take me to, but he wasn't alone. The woman from the photo stood next to him, her hand on his chest, her face half hidden in his shoulder. They looked happy, too happy. I dropped the phone like it had. Burned me. It clattered onto the floor, the screen still glowing faintly. I wanted to believe it wasn't what it looked like, that maybe it was just an old client, a friend, a misunderstanding. But the truth was right there, glowing in my palm, undeniable. He'd been meeting someone for years, maybe. The timestamp full story on my channel, link below.